The colony ship moved through space like a small fish in a vast ocean. Inside, 500 people slept in special pods, dreaming of their new home among the stars. The ship was called Meridian Dawn, and it carried families, scientists, farmers, and teachers. All of them had left Earth behind to start fresh on a new planet. Amy Collins was 17 years old. She had brown hair that she always tied back in a ponytail, and green eyes that were always curious about everything. She loved science, especially studying alien plants and animals. Her dream was to discover new forms of life on their new planet. She spent most of her time reading books about biology and watching videos about space exploration. Her sister Katie was 14. Katie was different from Amy. Where Amy was quiet and thoughtful, Katie was loud and full of energy. She made everyone laugh with her jokes. She loved music and wanted to teach children on the new colony. The two sisters were very close. They shared a cabin on the ship and spent hours talking about what their new life would be like. Their parents had died in an accident 3 years ago. Amy had become like a mother to Katie, protecting her and taking care of her. The colony ship was supposed to be their fresh start, a place where they could build a new life together. But the ship never reached its destination. The attack came without warning. One moment, everything was peaceful. The next moment, alarms were screaming through every corridor. Amy woke up first, confused and scared. She shook Katie awake just as the entire ship shuddered violently. The lights went red. People were running in the hallways, shouting and crying. Amy grabbed Katie's hand and pulled her out of their cabin. They needed to get to the escape pods. That was the rule in an emergency. Get to the pods and launch away from danger. But they never made it. Strange ships appeared outside the windows. They were dark and covered in sharp angles, nothing like human ships. Beams of bright light cut through the Meridian Dawn's hull. Sections of the ship lost air and went silent. Amy could hear the screaming stop in those areas, and she knew what that meant. People were dying. Amy pulled Katie into a storage room and locked the door. They hid behind boxes of supplies, holding each other tight. Katie was crying quietly, and Amy whispered that everything would be okay. She promised they would survive. She promised Earth would send help. She had no idea if that was true. The sounds of fighting lasted for maybe 20 minutes. Then everything went quiet. Amy and Katie stayed hidden for another hour, too scared to move. Finally, they heard something at the door. Metal screeching, then a loud bang. The door fell inward. 3 creatures walked in. They were tall, maybe 7 feet, with gray skin and 4 arms. Their heads were shaped wrong, too flat and wide. They wore armor that looked like it was made from black metal. One of them pointed a device at Amy and Katie. The device made a humming sound, then spoke in perfect English. The voice was cold and flat, like a computer. 2 young humans, healthy, valuable, take them. Amy tried to fight. She really did. She kicked and punched and screamed, but the creatures were too strong. They grabbed both sisters easily and dragged them out of the storage room. Katie was crying and calling for Amy, reaching out with her hands. The creatures took them through the damaged ship. Amy saw bodies lying in the corridors. She saw blood on the walls. She saw the faces of people she had known, people who had been alive just hours ago. Now they were gone. The sisters were thrown into a small cell with other survivors. Amy counted 12 people total, all young like them. The oldest looked maybe 25. The youngest was a boy who couldn't be more than 10. Everyone was terrified. The cell was barely big enough for all of them to sit down. There was no bathroom, just a hole in the corner. The air smelled bad, like fear and sweat. The older girl named Sophie tried to keep everyone calm. She told them to stay strong, that rescue would come. But days passed and no rescue came. The creatures came twice a day to give them food. It was gray paste that tasted like nothing. It made Amy's stomach hurt, but she forced herself to eat it. She needed to stay strong for Katie. The creatures also gave them water that tasted like metal. Amy learned that the creatures were called Zathrians. They were raiders who attacked ships and stole people. Sophie had overheard them talking. The Zathrians were taking them somewhere to sell them, like property, like things instead of people. Katie asked Amy if that was true. Could people really be bought and sold in space? Amy wanted to lie, to tell her sister that it wasn't possible. But she had read about history on Earth. She knew that humans had once enslaved each other. Maybe other species did the same thing? 2 weeks went by in that terrible cell. The Zathrians put chains on everyone's wrists and ankles. The chains were light but strong, made from some kind of metal that Amy didn't recognize. They also put collars around everyone's necks. The collars had small lights that blinked red. Sophie said the collars were translators. They would let the captives understand what aliens were saying. Amy touched her collar and felt sick. It meant the Zathrians were preparing them for sale, making sure the buyers could talk to their new property. The ship finally stopped moving. Amy felt the engine's power down. The Zathrians came and dragged everyone out of the cell. They were taken through corridors to a larger ship. This one was enormous, bigger than anything Amy had ever seen. Through windows, Amy could see a massive structure floating in space. It looked like a city made of metal, with lights everywhere and hundreds of ships docked at it. The structure was shaped like a wheel, slowly spinning. One of the Zathrians saw her looking. Its translator device spoke. "The hub, largest market in this sector. You will bring good price." Amy felt Katie squeeze her hand tighter. She squeezed back and whispered a promise. "I won't let them separate us. No matter what happens, I'll stay with you." It was a promise she meant with all her heart. She just hoped she could keep it. The ship docked at the hub. The sisters and the other captives were marched down a ramp into the station. Amy looked around at the crowds of aliens walking past. There were so many different species. Some had fur, some had scales, some looked almost human. None of them looked twice at the group of chained humans being led through the corridors. This was normal here. People being sold was just another day at the hub. Amy felt something break inside her chest. Was this really happening? Was this the galaxy humanity had been so excited to join? The Zathrians took them to a large room with bars on one side. It was a holding cell, bigger than the one on the ship, but just as depressing. There were other captives here too, different species that Amy had never seen before. All of them. The auction hall was huge and filled with bright lights. Amy stood on a platform with Katie beside her, both of them in chains. Hundreds of aliens sat in seats arranged in a circle around the platform. They were the buyers, the ones with money who wanted to purchase living beings like groceries. The auctioneer was a creature with 4 arms and purple skin. He was tall and moved in a way that made Amy feel sick. His voice came through her collar translator as smooth and friendly, like he was selling furniture instead of people. Amy had watched 46 other beings get sold before it was their turn. She had seen creatures cry and beg. She had seen families separated. She had seen a mother torn away from her child, both of them screaming. The buyers had clapped and laughed like it was entertainment. Now it was their turn. The auctioneer gestured toward them with 2 of his arms. Lot 47, 2 humans from Earth. Very rare specimens. The older one is 17 years of age, showing high intelligence markers. She can read and write in her native language. Perfect for technical work or research assistance. The younger one is 14, healthy and obedient. Excellent for domestic service or companionship. Amy felt rage burning in her chest. They were being described like dogs at a pet store. Katie was shaking beside her, and Amy pulled her closer despite the chains. The bidding started at 2,000 credits. A creature with too many eyes raised a limb. 2,500. Another buyer, this one covered in scales, made a clicking sound. 3,000 for both. The auctioneer smiled with too many teeth. Wonderful start. Do I hear 3,500? A creature that looked like a walking insect raised what might have been a hand. 4,000. But I only want the younger one. Amy's heart stopped. She looked at Katie, who had gone completely white. The auctioneer tilted his head. We can separate them if the price is right. The older one can be sold separately. No, Amy said. Her voice was quiet but firm. No, you can't separate us. The auctioneer looked at her with curiosity, like she was an animal that had done a clever trick. The merchandise does not get to make demands. Security, please remind this one of her place. A guard moved forward with some kind of stick. It crackled with electricity. Amy knew what was coming, but she didn't care. She stepped in front of Katie. We stay together. I don't care what you do to me. We stay together. The guard raised the stick. But before he could use it, another voice called out from the crowd. 10,000 credits for both. No separation. Everyone turned to look. The buyer was a creature Amy hadn't seen before. He had smooth red skin and stood on 4 legs. His face was long and narrow, with black eyes that reflected the light. He wore expensive-looking robes covered in patterns. The auctioneer's mood changed immediately. 10,000 was a lot of money. A generous offer, honored buyer. Does anyone wish to counter? The insect creature clicked angrily but didn't raise the bid. The one with too many eyes looked at the red-skinned buyer and seemed to decide against competing. There was something about the way other aliens looked at him that told Amy he was powerful or dangerous, maybe both. 10,000 going once, the auctioneer said. Going twice. Sold to Zelthor of the Vrexian Trade Guild. Amy felt her stomach drop. They had been sold. She was now property, owned by a creature whose name she could barely pronounce. Katie started crying again, quiet tears running down her face. Guards came to take them off the platform. They were led toward a hallway where Zelthor was waiting. The creature looked them over like someone examining fruit at a market. His translator device spoke in a voice that sounded almost bored. Good specimens. They will fetch twice that price in the core worlds. Come, my ship is waiting. Amy and Katie were pushed forward. Amy's mind was racing, trying to think of a way to escape. But there were guards everywhere, and they were in the middle of a space station. Even if they got away from Zelthor, where would they go? They were halfway down the hallway when the lights went out. For a moment, everything was completely dark. Then emergency lights came on, casting everything in red. An alarm started blaring, a sound that hurt Amy's ears. Zelthor made an angry sound. What is this? Is the station under attack? One of the guards was talking into a device. His translator made his words understandable. Unknown ships have appeared outside the station. They are demanding the release of all humans. They say they are from Earth. Amy's heart jumped. Earth? Could it really be? Zelthor made a dismissive gesture. Ignore them. Humans are a minor species. They have no power here. Take my property to my ship now. But the guard looked worried. Sir, they are broadcasting a message. You should hear this. The guard pressed something on his device, and a voice filled the hallway. It was speaking English, and Amy understood every word without needing her translator collar. It was a human voice, deep and angry and absolutely certain. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force Carrier Vengeance. You have taken our people. You have chained them and sold them like animals. This ends now. You have 30 minutes to release every human on this station and surrender those responsible. If you refuse, we will take them by force. This is your only warning. Amy felt hope explode in her chest like sunlight. Earth had come. Earth had actually come for them. Zelthor laughed. One ship? They send one ship to threaten the hub? Foolish. The hub has protection from 3 empires. Their ship will be destroyed, and I will add their crew to my inventory. But the guard still looked nervous. Sir, it is not one ship. Sensors show 7 ships, 1 large carrier, and 6 destroyers. They have launched fighters, many fighters. The alarm got louder. Now there were other sounds too. Explosions, distant but getting closer. The station shook, and Amy had to grab the wall to stay standing. Zelthor's confident expression changed. Get to the ship, now. They started moving faster down the hallway, but more explosions came, closer each time. The station shook harder. Dust fell from the ceiling. Some of the emergency lights went out, making the hallway darker. Then a new sound joined the chaos. Gunfire. Real gunfire. The kind Amy recognized from movies. Human weapons. The shooting was coming from somewhere ahead of them, getting closer. Zelthor stopped moving. Back. We go back to the auction hall. But it was too late. At the end of the hallway, a door exploded inward. Smoke filled the corridor. Amy could see shapes moving through the smoke, human shapes wearing armor that made them look huge and terrifying. One of Zelthor's guards raised a weapon. The humans shot first. The guard fell. The other guards tried to run, but the humans were faster. More shooting, more bodies falling. It happened so quickly that Amy barely had time to process it. Then the humans were standing in front of them. One of them stepped forward. His armor was covered in scorch marks and what looked like blood. He was holding a rifle that looked powerful enough to punch through walls. His helmet covered his face completely. Zelthor was making sounds of fear and anger. "You cannot do this. This is neutral space. You have no authority here." The armored human turned to look at Zelthor. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then the human raised his rifle and pointed it at the alien's head. His voice came through speakers in his helmet, cold and final. "You bought our children. That is all the authority I need." Zelthor started to say something else, but he never finished. The human pulled the trigger. The sound was incredibly loud in the hallway. Zelthor fell. Amy should have been horrified. She had just watched someone die right in front of her, but all she felt was relief and satisfaction. That creature had bought them. He had been planning to sell them again. He deserved what happened. The human lowered his rifle and turned to Amy and Katie. He reached up and removed his helmet. His face was young, maybe 25, with short brown hair and blue eyes. He was smiling, but there were tears running down his cheeks. "Amy Collins? Katie Collins?" he asked. Amy couldn't speak. She just nodded. The young man's smile got bigger. "My name is Sergeant Chris Palmer. I am from Earth. Your nightmare is over. You are going home." Katie made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Amy felt her legs give out, and she say Chris Palmer helped Amy and Katie stand up. Two more soldiers came forward, both of them carrying medical supplies. One of them was a woman with kind eyes. She introduced herself as Corporal Laura Bennett. Laura gave both sisters water and protein bars. "Eat slowly," she said. "Your stomachs probably are not used to real food anymore." Amy took small bites of the protein bar. It was the best thing she had ever tasted. Katie ate hers so fast she almost choked. Amy had to remind her to slow down. More explosions shook the station. Chris looked up at the ceiling, then spoke into his radio. "This is Palmer. We have the Collins sisters. 17 other humans are still somewhere on this station. Request location data." A voice crackled back through his radio. "We have them. Team 3 found them in the lower holding cells. Everyone is out. Repeat. All humans are extracted. Time to leave." Chris nodded. "Copy that. Moving to extraction point now." He led Amy and Katie through the damaged station. They passed bodies of aliens who had tried to fight. They passed sections where the walls had been blown open, showing space outside. Emergency doors had sealed those areas, but it made Amy realize how close to death they were. The station was falling apart. Fires burned in some corridors. Water or some other liquid was spraying from broken pipes. The alarm kept blaring its warning that everyone needed to evacuate. They reached a docking bay where a human shuttle was waiting. Its engines were already running, ready to leave immediately. Chris guided them inside. Amy saw other humans there, people from the Meridian Dawn. Some of them were crying with relief. Others looked empty, like they could not believe it was real. Sophie was there, the older girl who had tried to keep everyone's spirits up in the cell. She saw Amy and Katie and pulled them into a tight hug. All three of them cried together. The shuttle lifted off and flew out of the docking bay. Through the windows, Amy could see the hub. Parts of it were on fire. Ships were fleeing in every direction like insects running from poison. And above it all, she saw them. Human warships. The largest one was enormous, bigger than the hub itself. It was dark gray with sharp angles and weapons everywhere. Smaller ships flew around it like children staying close to their mother. Those must be the destroyers Chris had mentioned. The shuttle flew toward the big ship. As they got closer, Amy could see letters painted on its hull. She read them out loud. "Vengeance." Chris heard her and nodded. The carrier Vengeance. She is the pride of the Earth Defense Force, and that is just one of our carriers. We have 50 more back home. Amy looked at him in surprise. 50? I thought Earth only had a few warships. Chris smiled, but it was not a happy smile. That is what we let everyone think, but we have been preparing for war since the day we reached the stars. We knew the galaxy might not be friendly. Turns out we were right. The shuttle entered the Vengeance through a large bay door. As soon as they landed, medical teams rushed forward. Doctors and nurses checked every person, looking for injuries or illnesses. They carefully removed the collars, using special tools that made sure no one got hurt. A doctor looked at Amy's collar with disgust on his face. Translator collar with a shock function. These things can kill if someone tries to escape. Who puts these on children? Nobody answered because everyone knew. Monsters put these on children. Monsters who saw people as things to buy and sell. Amy and Katie were taken to medical beds. They got real food, warm showers, and clean clothes. For the first time in weeks, they felt human again. A counselor came to talk to them, a gentlewoman named Dr. Helen Price. She asked them questions about what happened, but she did it carefully and kindly. After the medical checks, a soldier told them that the captain wanted to meet them. Amy was nervous. Captains were important people. What would she say to someone that important? Chris Palmer came to get them. He walked them through the ship's corridors. The Vengeance was huge inside, like a floating city. Hundreds of people worked at stations, all of them focused on their jobs. Everyone they passed looked at Amy and Katie with expressions of relief and anger mixed together. They reached a door marked as the captain's office. Chris knocked, and a voice told them to enter. Captain Jake Morrison stood up from behind his desk when they came in. He was maybe 50 years old with gray hair and tired eyes. He wore a uniform covered in medals and ribbons. But when he looked at Amy and Katie, his eyes went soft. "Miss Collins, both of you," he said quietly. "I am very glad we found you." Amy did not know what to say. This man had brought ships across space to save them. He had attacked a station protected by 3 empires. He had risked his crew's lives for them. "Thank you," she finally said. "You saved us." Jake shook his head. "You should not have needed saving. You should have been safe on your colony ship, starting your new lives. What happened to you should never have happened to anyone." He gestured for them to sit down. Chris Palmer left the room, closing the door behind him. Jake sat across from them and leaned forward. "I need to ask you some questions. I know you are tired and scared, but I need to know everything about who took you and where they took you. Can you do that?" Amy nodded. She told him everything. The attack on the Meridian Dawn, the Zathrians who captured them, the weeks in the cell, the hub, the auction. She told him about Zelthor and the prices people paid for human beings. Katie added details that Amy forgot. Together, they painted a complete picture of their nightmare. Jake listened to everything without interrupting. His expression got darker and angrier with every word, but he stayed calm and let them finish. When they were done, Jake was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, and his voice was like ice. "The Zathrian Confederation will answer for this. The Vrexian who bought you is already dead, but his entire trade guild will be shut down. And the hub is being destroyed as we speak." Amy looked at him in shock. "You are destroying the whole station?" "Every piece of it. It was built on slavery and suffering. It does not deserve to exist." Jake pulled up a screen on his desk and turned it so they could see. It showed a view of the hub from outside. Human ships surrounded it, firing weapons at its structure. As they watched, huge sections of the station broke apart. Pieces tumbled into space. The hub, which had stood for 100 years as the galaxy's largest black market, was dying. "There will be consequences," Jake continued. "The empires are already sending angry messages. They say we had no right to attack the hub. They say we violated their sovereignty." "What will Earth do?" Amy asked. Jake looked at her with absolute certainty. "We will tell them we do not care. They allowed this to happen. They turned away while people were sold in chains. They are complicit in every crime committed there. And if they want to fight us over it, we will show them what happens when you hurt our people." Katie spoke for the first time since entering the office. Her voice was small but fierce. Will there be a war? Jake did not lie to her. Probably. The empires will not accept this quietly. They will mobilize their fleets and try to force us to back down. But we will not back down. Not ever. He stood up and walked to the window. Outside, human fighters flew past in perfect formation. This ship alone carries 120 fighters and 2,000 crew. We have 6 destroyers with us right now. Back at Earth, we have 49 more carriers and 300 support ships. Every single person in the defense force knows what happened to you. They saw the auction footage. They saw you in chains. He turned back to look at them. They are ready to fight. Not because command ordered them to. They want to fight. They want to make sure this never happens to anyone again. Amy felt tears in her eyes. We are just 2 girls. Why would so many people risk their lives for us? Jake walked over and knelt down so he was at their eye level. Because you are not just 2 girls. You are our children. Every human is family, and we protect our family. Always. He stood back up. You will stay on the Vengeance until we return to Earth. It will take about 3 months. You will have counselors to talk to and teachers to help you catch up on your education. When we get home, you will have new lives waiting. Earth takes care of its people. The news of what Earth had done spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The hub was gone, reduced to burning debris. Human warships had attacked without warning and without mercy. Every empire with a stake in the galactic order was furious. The Zathrian Confederation was the first to respond. Their High Council sent a formal message to Earth demanding compensation for their lost ships and crew. They wanted Jake Morrison arrested for murder and war crimes. They wanted the Vengeance and her escorts to be handed over as payment. Earth's response came from Admiral Rachel Stone, the highest-ranking military officer in the Defense Force. She was 60 years old, with white hair and a face carved from stone. She had fought in every major conflict Earth had seen in the past 30 years. When she spoke, even other admirals listened carefully. Her message was broadcast on every frequency, sent to every empire, translated into every known language. She appeared on screen wearing her full dress uniform, standing straight with her hands behind her back. Behind her was the flag of Earth, blue and green and white. This is Admiral Rachel Stone of Earth. We have received your protests and your demands. Here is our response. We do not recognize your authority to question our actions. We do not accept your claims of sovereignty over neutral space. We do not care about your economic interest in the slave trade. She paused, letting that sink in. The hub existed because you allowed it to exist. You knew humans were being taken and sold. You knew children were being auctioned. You did nothing. That makes you responsible. That makes you guilty. Her voice got harder. Every empire that protests our actions will be considered hostile. Every merchant who bought human slaves will be hunted down. Every official who enabled this trade will face justice. We are not asking for your permission. We are informing you of facts. The message ended there. No room for negotiation, no diplomatic softness, just pure certainty backed by military force. The galaxy was shocked. Humanity was a young species, barely 2 centuries into space travel. They had only 50 capital ships against thousands belonging to the major empires. How dare they make threats? The Zathrian Confederation decided to teach humanity a lesson. They assembled a fleet of 300 warships at their border system of Velkara. The fleet was commanded by High Admiral Texnor, a career military officer who had won dozens of battles. He sent a message to Earth demanding surrender. Earth's response was to send Admiral Ben Carter with the 3rd and 7th fleets, 30 ships against 300. The numbers seemed impossible. Amy and Katie were still on the Vengeance when they heard about the battle. They had been traveling toward Earth for 2 weeks. Life on the ship had become almost normal. They attended classes, talked to counselors, and slowly started to heal from their trauma. But when news of the battle came, everything stopped. The entire ship gathered in the main bay to watch on large screens. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the front, his expression grim. The battle footage came from cameras mounted on human ships. Amy watched as the two fleets approached each other in the darkness of space. The Zathrian ships were larger and more numerous. They formed traditional attack formations, just like the military books described. The human ships did something different. They split into small groups and spread out, moving fast and unpredictable. The Zathrians tried to adjust, but human ships were faster and more maneuverable. Then the shooting started. Human weapons were different from what the galaxy used. Most empires relied on energy beams that could be blocked by shields. Humans used missiles and railguns, physical weapons that hit hard and fast. Their targeting computers were better. Their tactics were more aggressive. The first Zathrian ship to die was a cruiser. It took 3 missiles to the engine section and exploded in a ball of fire. Then another ship died. And another. The Zathrians tried to regroup, but human fighters swarmed them like angry bees. Admiral Carter's voice came through the audio. Calm and professional. All ships, continue attack pattern Delta. Focus fire on their command vessels. Do not let them organize. Amy watched in amazement as human ships tore through the Zathrian fleet. It was not a battle. It was a slaughter. The Zathrians had numbers and size, but humans had experience. Centuries of fighting each other had made them experts in war. The Battle of Velcora lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Zathrian fleet was destroyed. 240 ships were gone, either destroyed or captured. The remaining 60 fled in panic. Earth lost 14 ships and 3,000 crew members. The kill ratio shocked the galaxy. Humanity had just destroyed a fleet 20 times their size, while losing only a small fraction of their own forces. Every military strategist in known space started reevaluating their understanding of human capabilities. But Earth was not done. Captain Jake Morrison explained it to Amy and Katie one evening over dinner. He had invited them to eat in his private dining room, something he did once a week to check on how they were doing. The Zathrians thought we would stop after one battle, Jake said, cutting his food carefully. They thought we would negotiate after showing our strength. They do not understand humans very well. What will happen now? Amy asked. Jake looked at her seriously. We are going to dismantle their entire slaving operation. Admiral Carter is already moving deeper into Zathrian space. Every slave market, every auction house, every ship suspected of carrying slaves will be destroyed. We will not stop until slavery is completely gone from their territory. Katie looked worried. But they have thousands of ships. Even if we win battles, they can keep building more. They can, Jake agreed. But wars are not just about ships. They are about will. How much are the Zathrians willing to lose to protect their right to enslave people? How many of their cities are they willing to see burned? How much of their economy can they afford to lose? He leaned back in his chair. We are betting they will break before we do, because we are not fighting for territory or resources. We are fighting for something that matters more. We are fighting to protect our own. Over the next month, news kept coming from the front lines. Earth forces were pushing deep into Zathrian space. They were not occupying planets or conquering territory. They were specifically targeting anything related to slavery. Commander Lisa Hayes became famous during this time. She had been promoted to captain and given command of her own destroyer called the Fury. Lisa was 35 years old with red hair and green eyes. She was known for being absolutely ruthless when it came to slavers. Her tactics were simple but effective. She would find a slaving ship and offer the crew one chance to surrender. If they did, she would take them prisoner and free their captives. If they did not surrender, she would destroy their ship without hesitation. Then, she would broadcast footage of the destruction to every nearby system as a warning. Other Earth captains adopted similar tactics. Within 3 months, the entire Zathrian slaving network had collapsed. Merchants refused to transport slaves anymore because it meant certain death if Earth ships found them. Auctions closed because no one dared to hold them. The entire industry that the Zathrians had built over centuries was destroyed. But the Zathrian Confederation was not the only empire with blood on its hands. The Vrexian supremacy had also been deeply involved in the slave trade. When Earth forces finished with the Zathrians, they turned their attention to the Vrexians. The Vrexians tried to negotiate. They sent diplomats to Earth offering to release all human slaves and pay compensation. They promised to outlaw slavery in their territory if Earth would just stop the attacks. Earth's response was cold. It was not enough to release humans. All slavery had to end. Every slave of every species had to be freed. And those responsible for the trade had to face justice. The Vrexians refused. They said Earth had no right to dictate their laws. They said humans were being unreasonable and aggressive. They mobilized their fleets for war. The Vrexian military was larger and more advanced than the Zathrian forces had been. They had better ships and better training. Military experts across the galaxy predicted that Earth would finally meet their match. They were wrong. Admiral Jake Morrison took personal command of the assault into Vrexian space. He led 12 carriers and 50 support ships in a campaign that would be studied in military academies for generations. Instead of attacking military targets, Jake went after economic ones. The Vrexian economy depended on trade. Massive cargo ships carried goods between systems, generating enormous wealth. Jake targeted those ships, not to steal their cargo, but to destroy it. He sent fighters to intercept trade convoys and blow them up, forcing the Vrexians to dedicate more and more military ships to protect their economy. At the same time, human special forces launched raids on Vrexian slave markets. They would appear without warning, free the slaves, and disappear before reinforcements arrived. The Vrexians tried to defend these locations, but they could not be everywhere at once. The campaign lasted 6 months. The Vrexian economy shrank by 40%. Their military was stretched thin trying to protect too many targets. Protests broke out on Vrexian worlds as citizens demanded their government end the war. Finally, the Vrexian supremacy sued for peace. They agreed to Earth's terms completely. All slavery would be outlawed. All slaves would be freed. Those responsible for the trade would be handed over to Earth for trial. Earth accepted. But they made it clear that they would be watching. If the Vrexians tried to restart the slave trade in secret, the war would begin again. The galaxy watched in disbelief as humanity forced 2 major empires to their knees. And Earth still was not done. The Colthan hegemony was next on the list. Life on Earth felt strange to Amy and Katie after everything they had been through. They were given an apartment in New Seattle, a beautiful city on the West Coast. The government provided everything they needed: money for food and clothes, access to counselors and doctors, teachers to help them finish their education. But Amy could not stop watching the news. Every day brought updates from the war. Earth forces were now fighting the Colthan hegemony, the 3rd major empire that had allowed the hub to exist. The Colthan were different from the Zathrians and Vrexians. They were a warrior culture that valued strength above everything else. The Colthan had watched Earth defeat 2 empires and decided they would not back down. Their military leader, War Master Keldrath, gave a speech that was broadcast across the galaxy. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, wearing armor decorated with the bones of his enemies. "Humanity thinks they can dictate terms to the galaxy," Keldrath said, his voice full of contempt. "They are children playing with weapons they do not understand. The Colthan hegemony has existed for 3,000 years. We have conquered 100 worlds. We will not bow to demands from a species barely out of their cradle." He pointed at the camera with one clawed hand. "Come then, humans. Come and learn what real war looks like. We will hang your ships from our walls, and your soldiers will serve as warnings to others who challenge us." Earth's response came from Admiral Rachel Stone again. She appeared on screen looking tired but determined. She had been coordinating the war effort for almost a year now, managing fleets across dozens of systems. "War Master Keldrath," she said calmly, "you mistake patience for weakness. We gave you the same choice we gave the others. Free your slaves and face justice for your crimes. You chose war instead. Very well. We will accommodate you." She leaned forward. "But understand this, we did not want to conquer anyone. We did not want to rule the galaxy. We only wanted our people back and to make sure this never happens again. You could have given us that. Instead, you chose pride. Now you will learn the cost of that choice." The war with the Colthan was different from the previous campaigns. The Colthan actually knew how to fight. Their ships were tough and their crews were brave. They did not run when battles turned against them. They fought to the last ship, even when defeat was certain. But bravery was not enough against human tactics and technology. Earth had learned from every battle, adapting and improving. Their ships got better, their weapons got deadlier, their coordination got smoother. Admiral Jake Morrison led the main assault force. After months of fighting, he had become known throughout the galaxy as the Breaker of Empires. His face was on wanted posters in a dozen systems. Some species saw him as a hero who freed slaves. Others saw him as a terrorist who destroyed the galactic order. Jake did not care what they called him. He just kept pushing forward. The Battle of Colton Prime was the turning point. The Colton homeworld was protected by the largest defensive fleet ever assembled. 5,000 ships surrounded the planet, ready to die defending it. War Master Keldrath himself commanded the defense from a massive battle station orbiting the planet. Earth sent 30 carriers and 200 support ships. On paper, the Colthon had overwhelming numbers. But numbers did not tell the whole story. Jake's battle plan was brilliant in its simplicity. Instead of a direct assault, he divided his fleet into 3 groups. The first group attacked from the expected direction, drawing the Colthon fleet into position. The second group waited hidden behind the planet's moon. The third group came from below the orbital plane, where the Colthon had fewer ships. When all 3 groups attacked at once, the Colthon formation collapsed. They could not defend against threats from multiple directions. Human ships exploited every opening, every moment of confusion. Missiles and railgun fire tore through Colthon's shields. The battle lasted 8 hours. It was the bloodiest fight of the entire war. Earth lost 40 ships and 20,000 crew members. But the Colthon lost everything. Their defensive fleet was destroyed. Their orbital stations were burning. Their homeworld lay exposed. Jake could have bombarded the planet. He could have killed millions in revenge for everything the Colthon had done. But he did not. Instead, he sent a message to War Master Keldrath. You have lost. Your fleet is gone. Your world is defenseless. We could end your species right now. But we are not monsters. We do not make war on civilians. Surrender. Free your slaves. Hand over those responsible for the slave trade. Do this, and your people will be spared. Keldrath appeared on screen looking defeated. His armor was scorched, and his face showed injuries from the battle. But there was something in his eyes. Respect, maybe. He had finally understood what humanity was capable of. You fight with honor, Keldrath said slowly. You could have destroyed us completely, but you offer terms. The Colthon accept. We will meet your demands. The surrender of the Colthon hegemony marked the end of major fighting. All 3 empires that had supported the hub were now either defeated or had agreed to Earth's terms. Slavery was outlawed across 100 systems. Thousands of slaves from dozens of species were freed, but the work was not done. Earth established peacekeeping fleets in every sector where slavery had been common. They worked with local governments to create new laws protecting sentient rights. They built shelters and schools for freed slaves who had nowhere else to go. Captain Lisa Hayes became the commander of the first peacekeeping fleet. Her job was to patrol former slave trading routes and respond to reports of illegal slaving activity. She was given 20 ships and authority to act without waiting for approval from Earth. She used that authority aggressively. Any ship suspected of carrying slaves was stopped and searched. Any evidence of slave trading meant immediate arrest. Pirates and criminals who tried to restart the trade learned quickly that Lisa showed no mercy. Stories spread about the red-haired human captain who seemed to appear wherever slavers tried to operate. Some called her the Angel of Freedom. Others called her the Red Death. Lisa did not care about the names. She just did her job. Amy and Katie followed all of this from their apartment on Earth. Amy was now 19 and enrolled in university, studying xenobiology like she had always dreamed. Katie was 16 and teaching music to children at a local school. They had rebuilt their lives, but they never forgot where they came from. One day, they received a message from Captain Jake Morrison. He was back on Earth for the first time in 2 years. He wanted to meet them. They met at a quiet restaurant in the city. Jake arrived in civilian clothes, looking older and more tired than Amy remembered. The war had aged him, but he smiled when he saw them. "Look at you two," he said warmly. "Thriving, building new lives. That is what I hoped for." They talked for hours over dinner. Jake told them about the final battles and the peace negotiations. He told them about the freed slaves finding new homes and new purposes. He told them about the galaxy slowly accepting the new order Earth had imposed. "Do you think it will last?" Amy asked. "Will they really stop enslaving people?" Jake considered the question carefully. "Some of them will try to restart the trade. There will always be criminals and predators, but they will face consequences now. We made sure of that. Earth will not look away anymore. Neither will the other species who suffered under slavery." He paused, then continued. "You two started all of this. When we saw that auction footage, when we saw you in chains, something broke inside all of us. We could not accept a galaxy where that was allowed to happen. We had to change things." Katie looked down at her plate. "So many people died. Thousands of humans and probably millions of aliens. All because we were captured." Jake reached across the table and took her hand. "No. All those people died because the galaxy allowed slavery to exist. You were victims. The empires that enabled your capture, that profited from your suffering, they are responsible, not you. Never you." Amy felt tears in her eyes. "What happens now? Will Earth rule the galaxy?" Jake shook his head firmly. "We do not want to rule anyone. We just want to make sure everyone is safe. Think of it like being police officers on a galactic scale. We patrol, we respond to problems. We protect those who cannot protect themselves." "And if someone challenges Earth?" Amy asked. "If another empire rises and tries to bring back slavery?" Jake's expression became hard. "Then we will remind them what happened to the last empires that tried. We have monuments now, on 100 worlds. They tell the story of two girls who were auctioned in chains and how Earth answered with fury that no empire survived. It is a warning and a promise. Do not test our resolve." They finished dinner and said their goodbyes. Jake had to return to his ship the next day. He was taking the Vengeance back out to the frontier, where new settlements needed protection. As Amy and Katie walked home through the city streets, they looked up at the stars. Somewhere up there, human ships were patrolling. Captain Lisa Hayes was hunting slavers. Admiral Rachel Stone was coordinating P5 years had passed since the war ended. The galaxy had changed in ways nobody could have predicted. The old order, where 3 major empires controlled most of known space, was gone. In its place was something new. Something that historians were calling the Free Systems Alliance. The alliance was built on the Sentient Rights Accords, the document Earth had written after the war. Every member species agreed to protect basic rights for all sentient beings. Slavery was forbidden absolutely. Trade was regulated to prevent exploitation. Military forces were limited to prevent aggression. And watching over it all was Earth. Amy Collins stood on the observation deck of the orbital station above Mars. She was 24 now, a qualified xenobiologist working for the Alliance Science Council. Her job was to study newly discovered species and determine their level of sentience. It was important work that helped protect primitive species from being exploited. Katie stood beside her, now 21 and a teacher at the Alliance Academy. The academy trained young people from dozens of species to work together. Katie taught music and cultural exchange, helping different species understand each other through art. They were waiting for someone. A ship was approaching the station, a small diplomatic vessel. Inside was Captain Jake Morrison, now retired from active service. He had asked to meet with them, saying he had something important to discuss. When Jake arrived, he looked different. He was 55 now, with more gray in his hair and deeper lines on his face. But his eyes still had that same determination Amy remembered from their first meeting. They sat in a private meeting room overlooking Mars. The red planet looked beautiful from up here, with its domed cities glowing like jewels on the surface. "I wanted you two to hear this first," Jake began. "Before it becomes public, the Alliance Council has decided to create a new position, Guardian of Sentient Rights, someone who can act independently to investigate and stop any violation of the Accords." Amy nodded slowly. That makes sense. Even with all our peacekeeping fleets, there are still problems. Pirates trying to restart the slave trade, colonies being exploited, species being taken advantage of. Exactly, Jake said. The position will have full authority to call on military resources if needed. They will answer only to the Alliance Council, not to any single government. It is a lot of power for one person. Katie leaned forward. Who are they choosing? Jake smiled slightly. Captain Lisa Hayes. She has spent the last 5 years hunting slavers and protecting the weak. Everyone agrees she is the right choice. But she asked me to talk to you two first. Why us? Amy asked, confused. Because this all started with you. Lisa wants to make sure you approve. She says, if you have any objections, she will turn down the position. Amy and Katie looked at each other. They both remembered Lisa from the news footage and stories. The red-haired captain who showed no mercy to slavers but infinite compassion for victims. She had become a symbol of justice across the galaxy. She has our support, Amy said firmly. Tell her we think she is perfect for the job. Jake looked relieved. Good. There is more. The council is also creating a memorial, a physical monument to remember the war and why it was fought. They want to build it here, orbiting Mars, and they want you two to be part of the design committee. Katie's eyes went wide. Us? Why? Because you lived it. You were there at the beginning. Your story needs to be told correctly, not sanitized or made pretty for politicians. Will you do it? They both agreed immediately. Over the next year, they worked with artists and architects from a dozen species to create something meaningful. The memorial became a massive structure, visible from Mars' surface. It was made of transparent crystal that reflected light in rainbow colors. Inside the memorial were 3 main chambers. The first was called the Chamber of Chains. It held actual chains and collars recovered from slave markets across the galaxy. Visitors walked through and saw the instruments of suffering that had been used on millions of beings. It was dark and uncomfortable, deliberately so. People needed to understand what slavery really meant. The second chamber was the Chamber of Fire. It showed the war through holographic displays. Visitors saw the Battle of Velcora, the Siege of Colton Prime, and dozens of smaller engagements. They heard the voices of soldiers who fought and died. They saw the destruction Earth had unleashed on those who enabled slavery. But the final chamber was different. It was called the Chamber of Hope. It was bright and filled with living plants from 100 worlds. On the walls were the names of every slave freed during the war. Millions of names in thousands of languages. And at the center was a simple plaque with words in every known language. 2 girls were auctioned in chains. Earth answered with fury, no empire survived. Let the galaxy remember that evil unopposed will flourish, but evil confronted will fall. We are the guardians now. We will not look away. The memorial opened 10 years after the war ended. Leaders from every Alliance species attended the ceremony. The crowd was enormous. Hundreds of thousands of beings, both human and alien. Many of them were former slaves, now free and building new lives. Amy and Katie stood on the stage with other speakers. Admiral Rachel Stone, now retired and writing her memoirs, spoke about the decision to go to war. Admiral Jake Morrison, also retired, spoke about the battles and the cost. Captain Lisa Hayes, now guardian of sentient rights, spoke about the future and the promise to protect the weak. Then it was Amy's turn to speak. She walked to the podium and looked out at the crowd. She saw humans and aliens standing together. She saw former slaves holding their children. She saw soldiers who had fought in the war standing at attention. She saw the future that had been bought with so much blood and pain. My sister and I were just 2 ordinary girls, she began, her voice carrying across the crowd. We wanted to study science and teach music. We wanted to explore new worlds and meet new species. Instead, we were captured. We were chained. We were sold like property. She paused, gathering her thoughts. We could have been forgotten. 2 more victims lost in the darkness. But Earth did not forget us. Captain Morrison and his crew came for us. They risked everything to save us. And when they saw what the galaxy allowed to exist, they decided it had to change. Some say Earth overreacted. that the war cost too many lives, that we should have negotiated and compromised. But I say this: how do you compromise with evil? How do you negotiate with those who see sentient beings as property? The galaxy had compromised for centuries, and slavery flourished. Earth said no more. Not one more child. Not one more innocent. Never again. The crowd erupted in applause. Amy waited for it to quiet down before continuing. This memorial is not about celebrating war. War is terrible and should be avoided. This is about remembering why sometimes fighting is necessary. It is about remembering that standing up to evil is worth the cost. It is about promising that we will never again look away when others suffer. She gestured to the memorial behind her. Walk through these chambers. See the chains. See the battles. See the names of those who were freed. Remember all of it. Because the only way to prevent this from happening again is to never forget it happened at all. Katie spoke next, her voice strong and clear. I was 14 when we were taken. I was scared and alone, and I thought I would die in chains. But I did not die. I am here, free, teaching children from a dozen species. That is the future we fought for. Not human dominance, not revenge, just freedom. For everyone. The ceremony ended with a moment of silence for all who had died in the war. Humans and aliens stood together, remembering the cost of justice. After the ceremony, Amy and Katie stood on the observation deck again, watching the memorial slowly rotate in orbit. Jake Morrison stood with them, along with Lisa Hayes and Rachel Stone. 3 generations of warriors and survivors, looking at what they had built together. Do you think it will last? Lisa asked quietly. Will the galaxy stay free? Rachel answered first. Nothing lasts forever. There will always be new threats, new challenges. But we built something strong. The alliance is not perfect, but it is better than what came before. And we trained the next generation to defend it. Jake nodded in agreement. The key is vigilance. We cannot get comfortable. The moment we stop watching, the moment we decide slavery is someone else's problem, it will come back. That is human nature. That is the nature of all sentient beings. Evil does not rest, so neither can we. Then we keep fighting, Amy said. Not with ships and weapons, hopefully, but with education and vigilance and the determination to never compromise on basic rights. Katie smiled. And we tell the story, over and over again. We make sure every child in the galaxy knows what happened. We make sure they understand why it matters. Lisa looked at the Collins sisters with respect. You two have done more than survive. You have become symbols of something larger: hope, justice. The idea that victims can become heroes. Amy shook her head. We are not heroes. The soldiers who fought and died are heroes. The diplomats who negotiated peace are heroes. We were just 2 girls who got captured. No, Rachel said firmly. You are the reason everyone fought. Your suffering made it real. Your rescue made it personal. Your survival gave it meaning. Never underestimate the power of that. The years continued to pass. Amy eventually became the head of the Alliance Science Council, making decisions about how to interact with newly discovered species. She used her position to ensure that no species would ever be exploited the way humans had been. Katie became the director of the Alliance Academy, teaching thousands of young people from hundreds of species. Her students went on to become diplomats, scientists, and peacekeepers. They spread the values of the Alliance to every corner of known space. Lisa Hayes served as guardian of sentient rights for 20 years before retiring. In that time, she stopped 17 attempts to restart the slave trade. She rescued over 10,000 beings from illegal captivity. She became a living legend, respected and feared throughout the galaxy. Jake Morrison wrote his memoirs and became a professor of military history. His book, The Cost of Justice, became required reading in military academies across the Alliance. He taught students that war should always be the last resort, but when it becomes necessary, it must be fought with absolute commitment. Rachel Stone passed away peacefully at age 85. Her funeral was attended by representatives from every Alliance species. She was buried on Earth with full military honors. Her gravestone bore a simple inscription: She defended the defenseless. The galaxy continued to change and grow. New species joined the Alliance. New colonies were founded. Trade flourished. Technology advanced. There were still problems, still conflicts, still challenges. But the fundamental agreement held. Slavery was forbidden. Exploitation was punished. The strong protected the weak. And at the center of it all, humans remained vigilant. Not as conquerors or rulers, but as guardians. They had learned a terrible truth about the galaxy and had decided they could not unknow it. So they watched. They patrolled. They responded to every cry for help with the same fury that had once shattered empires. Amy Collins lived to be 93 years old. On her deathbed, surrounded by children and grandchildren both human and alien, she was asked what she wanted people to remember. "Remember that we are all connected," she said quietly. "What happens to one species can affect all species. What we allow to happen to others reveals who we truly are." Earth could have ignored what happened to Katie and me, the galaxy certainly did, but Earth chose to act. They chose to fight. They chose to care. That is what I want remembered. Katie Collins lived to be 90, passing away just a few years after her sister. Her last words were simpler. "Tell the children to be brave. Tell them to stand up for what is right. Tell them that one person can change everything." The memorial still orbits Mars, glowing in the darkness of space. Millions of visitors pass through it every year. They walk through the chamber of chains and see the cost of indifference. They walk through the chamber of fire and see the price of justice. They walk through the chamber of hope and see what was won. And they read the plaque, the words that had become the motto of the Alliance. Two girls were auctioned in chains. Earth answered with fury. No empire survived. It was both a history and a warning, a reminder of what had been and a promise of what would never be allowed again. The galaxy had learned that humanity would forgive almost anything, but it would never forgive the enslavement of the innocent. And it would never stop fighting until every sentient being in the cosmos was free. That was the legacy of Amy and Katie Collins. Two ordinary girls who had suffered terribly but had become the spark that changed the galaxy forever. Their names were carved in crystal, shining in the light of a billion stars. Their story was told to children across 1,000 worlds. And whenever someone asked if Earth had overreacted, if the cost had been too high, if the war had been necessary, people would simply point to the memorial and say, "Walk through it, see what they saw, live what they lived, then tell us what price is too high for freedom." Nobody ever did, because once you understood what slavery really meant, once you felt the weight of those chains and heard the cries of the innocent, the answer became obvious. Any price, every price, whatever it took. That was Earth's answer. That was humanity's promise. And the galaxy never forgot it. Each keeping efforts. Thousands of humans and aliens were working together to build a better galaxy. It had started with tragedy, with capture and chains and an auction block, but it had become something larger. A movement, a promise, a new order where slavery was not tolerated and the strong protected the weak. Amy squeezed Katie's hand. "We should tell our story. Write it down so people remember." Katie nodded. "Not just our story, everyone's story. All the slaves who were freed, all the soldiers who fought, everything that happened. A memorial," Amy said, "so the galaxy never forgets the cost of allowing evil to exist." They would do exactly that. Together, the sisters would write a comprehensive history of the war and its aftermath. It would be taught in schools across Earth and translated into 100 languages. Future generations would learn about the day humanity looked at the galaxy's dark underbelly and decided to change it by force. But that was still to come. For now, they were just two young women walking home under Earth's familiar sky, grateful to be alive and determined to make their suffering mean something. Amy and Katie finally reached Earth after 3 months of travel. They stepped off the shuttle onto solid ground for the first time since their capture. The air smelled fresh and clean. The sun was warm on their faces. A crowd was waiting for them. Hundreds of people had come to welcome the survivors home. They cheered and waved flags. Some of them were crying. Amy realized that they were not just two girls who had been rescued. They had become symbols of why Earth was fighting. A reporter pushed through the crowd with a camera. "Miss Collins, how does it feel to be home?" Amy looked at the camera. She thought about the chains and the auction and the fear, But she also thought about Chris Palmer breaking down the door. She thought about Jake Morrison's promise that Earth would never stop fighting. "It feels like justice," she said. Amy and Katie left the captain's office feeling strange. They were safe now, truly safe. But they had learned something terrible about the galaxy. It was not the wonderful place of exploration and discovery they had imagined. It was dangerous and cruel, filled with beings who saw nothing wrong with buying and selling people. But they also learned something about humanity. When pushed to the edge, when their children were hurt, humans did not hesitate. They came with fire and fury. They broke every rule and challenged every empire, and they would not stop until justice was done. That night, Amy stood at an observation window watching space go by. Katie stood next to her, holding her hand. In the distance, they could see the last pieces of the hub burning as they fell toward a nearby star. "It is really gone," Katie whispered. "Yes," Amy said. "And everyone who hurt us will answer for it." She did not know how right she was. To down hard on the floor. The relief was so overwhelming that she couldn't stand anymore. Chris knelt down in front of them. "Can you walk? We need to get you to our ships. This station is not going to be standing much longer." "The chains," Amy managed to say. "We have the collars too." Chris looked at the chains and the collars. His expression went dark with anger. He pulled out a tool from his belt and carefully cut through the chains. They fell away. Then he looked at the collars. "These are going to be trickier. I do not want to hurt you. Can you walk with them on for now? We have medical teams on the Vengeance who can remove them safely." Amy nodded. She did not care about the collars anymore. They were free. They were actually free. Rechains. All of them looked hopeless. A guard threw them inside and locked the door. Amy found a corner and sat down with Katie. She put her arm around her sister and held her close. Katie had stopped crying days ago. Now she just looked empty, like something inside her had gone away. That scared Amy more than anything else. 2 days later, they were taken to be cleaned and dressed in new clothes. The clothes were simple white robes, clean but rough. Amy realized they were being prepared for display, for sale. Tomorrow was the auction.